We had a clear out in our house in December, and I don't know if you did this, I found a lot of diaries I used to keep from when I started out doing stand-up. So when you start out as a stand-up, you don't do a huge amount of gigs, you don't gig very, very often, so they all mean an awful lot, and they all feel very, very significant. So I used to write quite long diary entries after each show, seeing what I could learn, the things I would do different. Did you do that?
No, I left that to the press.
Anyway,
January 27th, smashed it. Next. 5 out of 5, 10 stars.
Anyway...
What no one saw then is that, as John said, I left that to the press. He winked at me.
Yeah, he did. He's back, ladies and gentlemen. He's back.
As if to say, am I right, Dave?
Good old...
Which year did Boris Becker do his mock GCSEs? Week 1.
Get over it, mate.
Unbelievable. What a waste. What absolute
Come on,
waste.
it's 2016. It's a
3
new
weeks
year.
of content.
It's a new year. It's a new you.
No, it's not. It's me with less iPhone games. Which means I'll be more ratty.
Right. Oh, that's what it is. You've gone cold turkey. That's what it is. If you had an iPhone game just sort of for sweet, sweet sucking.
Week 4 PhD. The year he finished his PhD.
But it was
Week 4. This is John Deacon's A-level results all over again.
It was a big news story.
It was not!
Well, how come I knew then? And I'm not even a fan of Queen. I think
You didn't know that?
Yes, I did.
Rubbish.
Well, I thought it was 2008, actually, so I checked
so
in
did I.
2007. Anyway.
God.
Lighten up, man.
Right. Ellis is reading out his gig diaries.
Right, okay. This is from a gig.
Haven't got a jingle for this, have we?
No. Do you want some music?
Yes.
Do you want some music, Al?
Yeah, go on then.
All right, at this moment.
Anyway, this diary features a certain John Robbins.
Yes, please.
So let's see if this person...
Is this the first time we met?
No, it's not, no. But I've only known you for about 18 months at this stage, I think.
Oh, okay, so it's quite early, quite late, you've been here quite a while.
Yeah. But, anyway, have you got the music
Hold
ready,
on.
Dave? Okay, so I'm just going to set the scene. It's from the 16th of the 6th, 2006. That's too many sixes.
Oh.
Was this the same music for Robins Amongst the Pigeons?
Right, okay.
Okay, good. Here we go.
Very similar.
Yeah.
Okay, St Ives, Cambridgeshire. Do you remember this? I gave you a lift. No. This might bring it back. I award myself 4.5 out of 10. Imagine Savannah's, which was the nightclub in Carmarthen where I had my 18th birthday party.
I do remember this.
Yeah, but bigger, with scarier bouncers in the middle of an industrial estate and named after an electronics firm, Lawton Electronics Limited. There are 24 people here. Mistake number 1. I went straight into banter. That is the compere's job. This is in capitals. Banter should be relevant. Stick to the set. Only include banter when necessary and if it adds to the joke. Like trying to do 10 minutes of material after 10 minutes of mediocre chat meant that I'd lost the buzz John had created.
Yes, please. That's more like it.
Mistake number 2. John had created a buzz. Yes, I completely failed to ride this. I completely misread the room and even asked people the same questions John had asked 10 minutes previously. I remember I was panicking. The gig was going really, really badly. We had to have our photos taken by the nightclub owner. Do you remember this? And you smoked in your photo.
Yeah, legend. I was just riding the bus I'd made, man.
Oh, God. Mistake number 3. Come into the light. How can an audience laugh when I look so disinterested and scared? Show my face, for God's sake. Mistake number 4. Where have my asides gone?
All right, Sir Laurence Olivier.
Oh, material about Barrymore, you idiot. That is as hack as you can get.
You're doing Barrymore stuff.
I had one Barrymore joke that was rubbish and it went really... Oh, God. This makes me cringe.
Good.
Mistake number 5. Gig more in capitals. You only improve by learning to read bad rooms.
This is like Brooker Block.
Getting a 5 out of 10 out of a bad room means you can get 11 out of 10 out of a good room. I am beginning to see the logic. I can't even somehow. I'm going to see the logic. After forming my own stand-up night in order to practice working with bad crowds. 4.5 out of 10. Must try harder.
Oh, well done. Nice little bit of advice there at the end. You're really giving yourself... maybe that's why I didn't write a diary because I always created a great buzz that you would then not.
It would have been it was a very long way away. It would have been about 4 or 5 in the morning. So I wrote that when I got in. I don't know if you remember the gig.
I do, yeah.
The nightclub owner gave us a critique of our set before paying us. Do you remember this?
No, I don't remember that.
Oh, we had to go into the room, into his office individually, and he counted out the cash, which was, I think it was like 35 quid or something. And then I remember, I could hear the critique you got. Lovely stuff. Love the crowd work. You really good. You really read them here in St Ives. And I went in and he went, yeah, I think you and the people of St Ives are on a different wavelength. Yes, I'm
so,
aware of that.
Folks, we'll hopefully get Elis to scour more of his gig diaries for more insights into the early days of the James Empire.
X. Elis James and John Robbins. Radio X.
That was Helicopter. Sorry, I became momentarily inconvenienced. That was Helicopter by Block Party. You're listening to Elis James and John Robbins on Radio X. It's almost time to say goodbye, folks. But just to reassure you, Elis will be reading out extracts from his gig diaries that he made in the mid-2000s, and I'm reliably informed he's just discovered a belter. Oh. So tune in for that next week. You're listening to Radio X, and now it's time for a new feature on the Elis, James and John Robbins show. We had the first instalment last week, but luckily Elis discovered the other day when clearing out his house that he kept a gig diary for the first few years of his career, and we're going to be dipping in to the observations he's made about some early gigs. My highlight from last week was your note to yourself, where are the asides? So, Elis, take it away with Elis James's gig diaries.
Right, okay. This is from a gig I've probably mentioned on the show before at the Hatchet Pub in Bristol, where John and I cut our teeth. It was the worst gig of my career up to date, and it's the one where that person shouted at me, "You have lost control. You have lost control. This needs to stop." My gig diary also served as my work diary at the time, so there are lots of sort of office-based notes in the margins. This one from March 2005. What is HTML?
Who would have thought that years later you'd be pioneering the use of email?
Exactly. Lovely little note from a gig on the 28th of the 4th, 2005. I was comparing in Cardiff. Maybe mention it was recently the end of the financial year. Unbelievable. Anyway, here it is at the Hat Shed.
What a great sort of, as if that was your trademark opening line to point out where it was in the accounting year.
Also, I mean, it was just sort of, it's the end of April. It'd been the end of the financial year for a month. And I was like, hey guys, anyone done their accounts in the last 5 to 6 weeks? Okay, great. Anyway, 30th to the 10th, 2005, 2:28 a.m. after the Hatchet gig, unable to sleep. Well, the gig was a nightmare. The pub was full of Motorhead fans who were just coins, and people who were just coins but not affiliated to any particular heavy rock group. On being faced with such a rowdy crowd, sticking to material that required a knowledge of the Crimean War was a mistake. I don't begrudge people for not knowing about the Crimean War.
I remember your stuff about the Crimean War.
Yes. Listen, for God's sake, I'm 25 on Thursday and I haven't even read Waiting for Godot. I don't know what that's got to do with it.
Have you read it yet?
No, I own a copy, so I'm halfway there. But I do reserve the right to be aggrieved when the coins don't listen. I apparently need to be nastier with an audience. Brackets, being sarcastic when people were chatting came across as bitter and desperate. One thing I learned tonight is that some hecklers actually want you to make them look stupid, as any attention is better than no attention. I must learn to take advantage of these weirdos. Things I learned tonight. Maybe doing an impression of someone or something isn't enough. It is imperative that I follow it up with something. A girl laughed because I used the word foreboding, but she was laughing in the wrong way. The goth in the green t-shirt at the front hadn't heard of Lord of the Flies, for God's sake. Then...
But I love the fact that how can you take that on to use at your next gig?
Exactly. This is in capitals. Do not start with a Crimean War Viceroy of India stuff. Get to know your audience. It is not a given that these people will find this niche humour funny. I should try different styles. I risk getting stuck in a rut and having to rely on impressions, people finding obscure celebrities funny. My hummus and football observation would raise no more than a smile from most, which means it has to go as material. It is simply not good enough. A comic needs to make killer observations, not gentle ones, right? This is one of the notes I found from the set. What sort of reaction would you give if you saw your partner in a kimono? Brackets, this is too long. Oh,
bizarre insight into the formative years of James.
God, I'm so hard on myself. What is HTML?
But that's not to do with the gig.
No, but it's just such a... I don't recognise this person. That's the weird thing. In that I don't even remember a lot of the material.
Do you remember the Crimean War stuff?
I think... I was thinking about this in the shower. I think that it was... a diary of someone who was fighting the Crimean War, but from the perspective of like a modern teenager. So it's things like, I hope there's plenty of bottles of Blue Wicked when we win this war. That's really bad.
Elis James and John Robbins. Radio X.
It's time for a new, semi-new feature in which Elis reads aloud from his a diary he kept in his early stages of gigging. It's rapidly becoming one of my favourite features. So, Elis, what have you got for us this week?
This is from the 3rd of October 2007.
So you've been going about 2.5 years?
Yeah, 2.5 years performing at the Propaganda Music Canteen in Andover.
I did the gig there.
It's awful, isn't it? Horrible.
Yeah.
Anyway, as you can imagine,
It's full of squaddies.
Yeah, it was, as you can imagine. And he performed under a massive framed picture of Michael Stipe.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, it was an indie rock, an alternative rock themed tapas bar that ran a free gig.
I once
that was
had
full of squaddies.
I once had a gig there that went so badly that I offered not to take my fee.
Yeah.
And the other act on, do you remember Danny James?
Oh yeah.
He went, rule number 1, never ever refuse your money. And I thought, fair enough. That was a very bad impression of him.
Fair enough. Oh God. Well, anyway, I remember this gig. I was on quite a good run of form, and everyone told me it was the hardest gig in England. And I was like, okay, you didn't see what I did in Tewkesbury last week. So I took the gig thinking this would be a real test, and I'm ready. And the gig obviously went very badly. I know it's gone badly because I've awarded myself 2 out of 10, and the diary entries written all in caps.
He's angry.
The headline act seized the room by the scruff of the neck by shouting and being louder than the talkers. This is something I must instinctively learn to do if comparing a difficult gig. I can't believe I went on and tried to do the whole shambolic, shuffling, endearing thing. I am pathetic.
To be fair, that's never worked.
Yes, yeah, fair enough, yeah. I should have been larger than life. Just like the headliner is currently being. His repartee is arrogant, bullshit.
Currently being?
Yeah,
so you're writing this while he's on stage?
Yeah.
Amazing.
He's discussing mainstream topics and he's doing it well. I need to write jokes. I need to write jokes! Underline the second time round. I can see why the headliners are Jongler's regular. He's managed to get some banter out of a crowd I thought weren't interested, and some of them had learnt English in the last 24 hours. His banter topics, the best place to have a fight in town. The town's main industry, jobs. What's attractive?
Is he a trade union leader?
Local news, brackets, if possible. This week's news, brackets, general. The headline is discussing the best time to get served, whether taxi drivers have no change very often, and also what swingers nights might be like. Oh, good grief. It was a free gig. When comparing, I need to find stuff like that out beforehand and arrive early to sound the place out. God, tonight was hard. But
oh, that's so funny. What I love about it is I knew you at this time, and yet the writing suggests you have no sense of humour. It's so earnest.
It's because I was so desperate for stand-up to go well, and more often than not it went very badly, so I was just always very angry at myself. But I found this is from the 12th of November 2008, Royal College of Music and Drama for a promoter called Silky. It was fun, but very poorly attended. Got to be honest, I did quite well. I didn't take it very seriously. John Robbins is a bad influence. Because we did the gig together. Do you remember Ian Cognito was on and he had food poisoning and you had to go and wake him up before he headlined?
Oh yeah, he stole the stamp that they put on the NUS cards there. He's in his 50s. To get free student rail ticket, and then the head of the NUS panicked and he had to go and return because it's an official stamp they put on NUS cards. This 55-year-old comic had to return a stamp to gig in, was it Bournemouth or something?
Oh, yeah, Warwick or something.
That was Foals with Birch Tree. You're listening to Radio X. I think I'm right in saying that's brand new from Foals.
It's the latest single, yeah.
It's the latest single from Foals. So keep up with them. They're going from strength to strength. Someone who was also going from strength to strength in the mid-2000s was a wily new comedic voice from Carmarthen called Mr. Ellis James.
He was offering fresh angles.
He was offering fresh angles and a sideways glance at the news. And Ellis, luckily, unlike me, kept a gig diary for his early years. And over the past few weeks, we've been hearing excerpts from the originals. And Ellis has got some choice morsels to serve up to us today. So, Ellis, what have you got?
Right, this is from the Comedy Caf, Shoreditch, 26th of March 2008. Possible MC question to ask the crowd. Has anyone learnt anything today?
Great bit of scripted banter.
Great bit of scripted banter.
What? I bet that never got anything.
No, absolutely nothing. Because then I never mentioned it in the notebook again. And oh, God. Aberystwyth supporting Rod Gilbert, 29th of the 2nd, 2008.
Big gig.
Big gig, certainly for me at the time. I walked out and I said hello and went straight into material. Why didn't I talk about how featureless the stage is? Have I learnt nothing? I could have imagined some features because the stage is featureless. Then, I don't know what I was thinking here. The AIDS stuff didn't work on it. Next line.
The what?
AIDS stuff didn't work. Must work on it. Next line. Must sort of MySpace.
I love those great tips. If you're going to do material about the disease AIDS, do make sure it's well worked on.
I don't
also,
remember.
get a MySpace page.
I don't know what that was. It didn't stick around for very long. It kind of been very funny. Difficult subject to make funny anyway, but obviously I also did need a MySpace.
Did you get a MySpace in the end?
Eventually, yeah, eventually. Theatre Havre Newtown supporting Rod Gilbert, 8th of February 2008. 6.8 out of 10 I award myself.
Okay.
Classic,
Didn't die, didn't fly.
Yeah, classic theatre gig in a town where the nearest comedy club is 85 miles away. They enjoyed it. They were respectful, but a bit quiet. The only time the gig really caught hold was when I took the mickey out of a woman in the front row who had never been to Leeds.
What an odd thing to chastise someone for.
I should have realised that this was the way to go, but due to nerves, I stuck rigidly to my material. Taking the mickey out of the woman who had never been to Leeds established funny bones. I came out of this banter early, which was a missed opportunity.
Yeah, but how would you have carried that on? Okay, so has anyone not been to Halifax? Huddersfield. Give me a cheer if you've never been to Huddersfield.
Show of hands. Who has been to Leeds? Well, I think that speaks volumes. Yeah, I mean, that's what the other thing I remember from that gig was that when I walked into the venue at about 6 o'clock before the sound check, everyone laughed. So I walked into the cafe and everyone laughed. The foyer, everyone was laughing. And I thought, what is going on here? And it's because the sound man looks so much like me. It was like something out of a horror film.
Oh, right.
And Rod got him on stage, and the two of us had to stand next to each other, and it was like to sort of gasps.
An example of the sort of riffing Rod Gilbert was capable of that you were turning down.
I was too new, too green.
You're coming out of riffs about not having been to Leeds too early, Ellis.
Absolutely shocking.
Whereas now, that would make up your entire half-hour set.
Yeah, and then I asked, if anyone had learnt anything, got nothing. Did my material 6.8 out of 10.
Oh.
But anyway, I've got an absolute belter for next week, which you
great.
feature very heavily in.
Do I?
Yeah.
Yes. I can't wait. I'm really excited. There you go. Ellis's Gig Diaries on Radio X.
Radio
X.
You're listening to Radio X, and folks, I'm so excited because it's time for a James branded feature which has been running for a few weeks now, where Elis has rifled through his old gig diaries. He used to keep quite worryingly accurate diaries of his early stand-up forays, and this week's proves to be quite something. So I hand you over to Mr. Ellis James.
June the 1st, 2006. Punchline idea. Maybe say the word fetus in a high voice.
What? What's a punchline to what?
I don't know, John.
Say the word fetus in a high
Oh,
voice.
fetus.
Really?
I think that what I was trying to do was I was trying to go on and be like sort of charming and approachable, and then I would say things that the audience wouldn't expect, like fetus in a high voice, and then that was the joke. But I didn't try it. I only tried it once, so obviously it got... Yeah, anyway, here we go. A bit later this is from 2009. 5:06 a.m, 23rd of February 2009. Did new stuff at Mark Olver's gig in Bristol. Very studenty crowd, and I felt comfortable up there. Robbins was at the gig, drunk and heckling the other acts.
Oh, no.
Listen to this, John. He's done gigs in Chertsey and Telford this week and has quit his residency in Taunton. He's doing well, and he doesn't give an S. He told me I should resurrect my kitchen scissor story for my Edinburgh show and that it's the best thing I've written. Brackets, old notebook. 24th of the 2nd, 2009. So this is the next night.
Oh, God.
Having just done kitchen scissors at Bournemouth University in front of a disinterested crowd, it didn't get what it deserved. My reference to Rodney King and the 1992 LA riots got nothing.
God. I have a stroke.
There was £1 a pint offer at the gig. Who are the ENTS officers who think this is a good idea? You can't mix £1 a pint cider and comedy. They just think stand-ups are travelling clowns. 27th of the 2nd, 2009.
Rodney King.
This is 3 days later. Despite trying it again in front of Steve Bennett as well, who's quite a sort of big comedy critic, kitchen scissors didn't provide quite the reveal Robbins thought it would, even though the preamble is promising. That said, Naked Man at Carmarthen Leisure Centre got a great response. Maybe this is one for the Edinburgh show. I think my kitchen scissors and razor blade stuff should be combined into one 5-minute routine about sharp things.
A 5-minute routine about sharp things. Oh, my days.
But yeah, I found I found more notebooks yesterday.
Yes, please.
So and there are earlier ones as well. But oh, good grief! I mean, I don't think I had a good idea until about 6 months ago. If for anything,
I was such an
absolute dross.
I was such an idiot, though. Why was I at a gig drunk heckling other
I used to do that
acts?
quite often at Oliver's gig.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think I was a bit lonely, and I sort
Yeah.
of didn't really know how to display that.
yeah. So you displayed it by heckling acts who'd come. Some of whom had come from Swindon.
Yeah. Oh, God. I think that was where I first ever saw Josh Widdicombe at that gig.
Yeah, maybe. But you were the sort of master at that gig because you used to do it a lot. So the audience, it was a very regular crowd, so they sort of knew who you were.
Which one was it?
Oliver's one at Oppo, Drumber.
Yeah.
So you'd either turn up and compare drunk, or you just get drunk and heckle the other acts.
Oh, I've got a shame hangover now that's 7 years old. Sorry to everyone that ever lived.
Don't worry about it. You're great, mate. You're great. Anyway,
Thanks,
there'll be
mate.
another one of those next week.
I cannot wait. Big tune there, fat riff. Don't mind it, mate. Keep it up. That was The White Stripes with Blue Orchid. You're listening to Elis James and John Robbins, and it's time now for my new favourite feature, where Elis reads from gig diaries he kept in the past, where he was a very different man.
Right, here we go. This is from Wednesday, the 28th of March, 2007. I was still working at this point. 13:37 in the afternoon, 1:37 p.m. It's written on office-headed notepaper shortly before I was made redundant. Catacomb, sterile, banquet, vagabond, grocer. Remember these, because these are funny words. Then, in brackets...
Can you read us that list again?
Catacomb, sterile,
Yep.
banquet, vagabond, and grocer. And then, in brackets, what about pipe? So the jury's still out on pipe. Not sure
But
if...
these are just sort of ideas for vaguely funny words you might like to add to your fledgling stand-up?
Yeah, so if I was writing a routine, it's just there's a long list of words I think are funny. So if I can shoehorn those funny words into the routine.
And how long had you been performing it by this time?
Embarrassingly, over 2 years. Right, so yeah, I've been going, starting in January 05, so just over 2 years. Then 29th of the 3rd, 2007, so it's the next night actually. Poncho Comedy Club, Chapter Arts Centre, Cardiff. It's a gig we both did when we started out.
Yep.
Tonight was tough. I don't think I'll ever forget the looks on the audience's faces as I said the word vagabond over and over again to silence. People were confused because nobody really says the word vagabond anymore. Sure, the word is funny, but only in the context of a joke that's actually about vagabonds. How could I have missed this? Low point was when people arrived halfway through my set, had to ask if this was comedy, and when Sean the promoter said, yes, isn't Elis great, they all left. I saved the set by doing my default Northerner impression at the last minute. I have to move on from this. The new stuff isn't working and I'm stuck in a dangerous rut.
What was your default Northerner impression?
I just used to go, hey, as imagine I'm from Lake Newcastle, Lake. And people liked it. 26th of the 1st, 2006, bit earlier, right? So I've been going about a year, almost to the day. Jesters, Bristol.
Oh, big gig.
6.5 out of 10. You're better than doing jokes about alloy wheels. Also, the Cockney impression didn't get a laugh because I opened with it, and at that stage, the audience didn't know that I wasn't actually a Cockney. Brackets, rejig this for Stroud. One more, right? There's a happy ending, right? I've realised in the week I've never read a diary entry from when I actually had a good gig, right? It's just to reassure listeners that it wasn't all terrible. This is from Friday the 15th of August 2008, so I'm doing the Comedy Zone at the Edinburgh Festival, some new act show that John had done the year before in 2007. So I award myself 7.5 out of 10, and I'm buzzing. I'm absolutely buzzing. Some great ad-libbing tonight, including one piece about fallopian tubes that was utterly inspired. It really got the crowd going following a tough start, so I talked about wombs for 10 minutes before bringing on Henry Packer.
Oh, man. If ever anyone was to compile a sort of a compilation of various comedians' early gig notes, it should be called Re-Gig by Stroud.
Yeah, Rejig by Stroud.
Rejig for Stroud.
But I remember the fallopian tube stuff came because the night before I'd asked someone in the front row what they did for a living, and you can't see what's in the front row because the lights are so bright at the Comedy Zone, it's the cabaret bar, and it was a lady I was talking to and I thought it was a man, and I couldn't sort of hide my surprise, and I felt terrible about it. So the next night I asked if a person had fallopian tubes, and it just grew from there.
Wow.
I mean, I can't believe it's not a thing I do.
Anyway, Elis, it's time for my favourite feature. It's Elis's Gig Diary.
Okay, here we go.
Just to remind listeners, this is where Elis reads from his diaries that he kept in his early stand-up career, giving John an insight into the formative brain of James.
Right. 2nd of October 2006. 9 out of 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. A great night. Why can't all comedy gigs be like the Swansea Institute Townhill campus? Now, this is very odd because I was keeping these records in my sort of general diary for work and social stuff as well, and I'd completely forgotten about this short period in my life. 23rd of April 2007, my first ever flute lesson.
Someone's desperate for material.
Yeah. 5 out of 10.
Your flute lesson?
Yeah,
5 out.
I don't even remember his name. He simply wasn't good enough.
What, your teacher?
Yeah, we just did not click. I tried 3 different flute teachers, and I just didn't click with any of them.
Did you end up flouting a flautist?
Yes, very good. Right, here we go. 28th of May 2007, a significant date. Taunton Brewhouse Theatre. John Robbins told me to gig more, to write more, that I was funnier off stage than on.
I've told other people that in the
and
past.
that I needed to find my comedic voice.
True, good advice.
6 out of 10, brackets £30. 17th of December 2007, 12 bar Swindon, £20. The only note's not even a set list, right? If it's going to fly, I really need to modify my shed's material. Right, now, this is...
Can you remember your shed's material?
Yes, and I reprised it for my Welsh language show. For some reason, it's funnier in Welsh than English, I don't know why, but they were not buying it at the 12 bar in Swindon. The fee was £20 instantly. Right, the Hawaiian, 11th of the 3rd, 2006, so I'd have been going for about a year, but I did that gig a lot. I was a regular at the Hawaiian. Tonight was bad. I've lost focus at these gigs. I tried to improvise a riff based on an article I just read about Guantanamo Bay. I panicked and I went straight into my material about how filling in forms is very boring. I then asked if anyone has watched the rugby. Most had, so I did an impression of a woman buying chips which offered nothing. I need to gig more, in capitals. O'Neill's, Cardiff, 16th of the 9th, 2007. Good performance, if a little loose. Slow start, but that was due to technical problems which I handled smoothly. Brackets, in capitals, regular gigging is doing me the world of good. Finally, my material about an alien buying clothes from TK Maxx seems to have a strong punchline. But I need to try it in at least 5 venues and away from my South Wales comfort zone. I should have been braver, tried a bit of audience interaction. The man sat next to Laura, who's wearing a small coat, was there for the taking. Oh well, next time. I did it with "oh well, next time."
Oh well, next time. Next time there's a man in a small coat next to Laura, you know what to do.
Oh yeah, go in hard. Oh.
Phenomenal stuff there.
Anyway, there's I found some more diaries at the weekend. So plenty more.
This is amazing. How many have you got?
I just used to keep... I still write set lists in my notebook before every gig.
Oh, I don't do it every gig.
Every
I don't
time.
do it anymore. I just tend to sort of just riff it. But that's wonderful.
Oh dear. I like the fees as well. £20, 12 bar Swindon. £30, Taunton Brewhouse Theatre, and which I drove you to that gig, and then you got drunk, and then you told me that I hadn't found my comedic voice. You're funnier off stage than on, which is
you are welcome.
Which is a positive when you unlock that Elis like I have. Oh, thanks, John.
Just because I was gigging in Minehead at that time. Brackets £60. Oof. Actually, £20. So, team, regular listeners will know that over the past couple of months, we've been getting an insight into some of the early formative stages of Elis James's stand-up career, because he kept religiously a diary of his first gigs, some of which featuring a talented, mysterious comedian called John Robbins.
I found the diary with where I take your phone number the first time.
Oh, that must have been a big moment for you.
John Robbins, which I've misspelt, 2 B's, Bristol comic, bracket, question mark.
So, Elis, have you got an excerpt for us today?
Yes, Gig Diaries, here we go.
Okay, hit it.
23rd of March 2006. Idea. Talk about being single. Maybe act out eating a ready meal in a sad way. Open brackets, if they're going for it, do take my time to enjoy this. Write jokes about radiation as everyone has heard of it.
You're kidding me.
No, that's true. 21st of November 2005. Joke ideas, themes, riffs, topics. Things I cannot do. Order wine properly. Mix cement. Understand or empathise with gang warfare. How was I going to turn that into stand-up?
Imagine the link between ordering wine and mixing cement.
Strained link, tenuous link. 19th of the 6th, 2005, Bristol Jesters.
Oh, big gig.
The Old Room as well. The shape of the room is hard. I couldn't connect with people. Ironic impressions just sound like I can't do the impression. Head teachers drinking from a cafetiere is too easy a target. What was that?
You can never accuse yourself of being hackneyed. The old stand-up cliche. Head teachers drinking from cafetières.
Also, the joke about Kofi Annan doing a speech at the UN Christmas do was confusing and very few people got the reference. For anyone who was interested at the time, he was Secretary General of the UN. Now, obviously, it's Ban Ki-moon.
The idea of you in Jesters on
That
Friday
tough
night.
gig, the Thursday one, Sally's gig.
Oh, trying to sell your Kofi Annan material.
Yeah, having just talked about head teachers drinking from a cafetiere, them not going for that, and me thinking it's because it's hack. It's because I've heard it all before. Northampton Picture Room for Avalon.
Oh, one of the top worst gigs ever invented.
Tough gig that. November 2007. If I'm to make it as a professional stand-up comic, these gigs have to be my bread and butter. And yet I let the occasion get the better of me. Just before I brought on Will Hodgson, I broke my stride to tell a lady in the front row that her Kiev had arrived. I never regained my momentum and brought Will on to silence. Pointing out that Kiev is not my job. There has to be a disconnect between comedy and food. They are two separate arenas. Tenancy agreement material has potential.
Oh, bless your cotton soul.
There has to be a disconnect between comedy and food. They are
true.
two separate arenas. What happened was she was watching me. The gig was going very badly. She was watching me, and then a waitress put a plate on her table, and I sort of didn't. She hadn't noticed. She was one of the few people paying attention. I said, "Oh, by the way, your Kiev's arrived." She said, "Oh, thank you." And then people just looked at me as if to say, "So what is your role, Kiev man?"
If the Northampton Picturedrome had gone on to be your bread and butter, you would be so depressed.
It's a hard
The only
gig.
place I've ever died as a compere after trying to organise a group sing-along of Fairy Tale of New York on a Christmas day. They just stared at me.
Yeah.
I panicked and forgot the lyrics and then died on my arse.
Yeah, guy I used to work with, who I hadn't seen for 10 years. I did that gig about a year ago, and he brought his wife, who I'd not met, and her friends from work. Oh, you got to see Elis. He was really funny. I used to work with him, and awful. I mean, they hated it.
At least we never have to do that gig ever again.
Well, I've got it booked in for April.
You're joking.
Anyway, let's play a track.
Have you?
Yeah, I think I have, yeah.
Mate,
It's my bread and butter, John.
sort that out. It's time for my and many of the general population's new favourite feature. It's where Elis reads aloud from gig diaries he kept in the early days of his stand-up career, giving us an insight into both the comedy scene at the time, his psyche, and a mysterious figure by the name of John Robbins. Elis, what have you got?
Okay. Pen and Wig, which is a pub in Cardiff, 12th of
That was the first gig I ever did an hour on stage. They had not asked me to.
No, that was not on anyone's agenda. Right. Pen and Wig, pub in Cardiff, 12th of December 2005. I have entered a dangerous bubble. I'm complacent. The people I hang out with all find pesto funny, but that is misleading. Tonight was a 20-minute set, a chance to stretch my legs, but it proved how far I still have to go. The superstition potato bit got nothing. Asthma pump routine sounded like a cry for help, and I need to move on from alloy wheel.
Can you remember your alloy wheel bit?
I can't. It was actually quite smutty, so I can't do it on air.
What was the potato bit?
Superstition potato was I'd read in a history book that superstitious Welsh people in West Wales in the 1800s thought that potatoes, if you held them in a certain way, could stave off rheumatism. I tried to get 5 minutes out of it.
How do you make a bit about alloy wheels smutty?
Well, I would have done it in front of you 20 times probably. It was like a takedown of those Booze Britain programmes, but smutty, and there was an alloy wheel routine, and it was often met with stunned silence.
Amazing.
3rd of March 2006. This isn't a gig diary as such. It's details for a sketch idea I had about a therapist who keeps sending depressed people for a pub lunch. I'd read about alternative therapies in the paper, so the last
And that
half a
was what you
page
came
is
up with.
all about crystals. Joke idea. Look up collective nouns for obscure animals. Comic potential? ? Oh my God.
What, like a cathedral of crows?
Yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah, and then just going on and just saying them. Hatchip, Bristol, July 2005. Joke idea. Suggests that I'm there as part of an EU directive and that by performing I'm fulfilling a laugh quota. Then my Chris Akabusi impression. Abertillery, 3rd of the 6th, 2005.
May I just say, it was very hard to get a grip on you in those early days.
Wait till you see what's coming up. This will knock your socks off. Abertillery, 3rd of June 2005. I vividly remember this gig 'cause we turned up, I think it must have been like a Monday night, and there was loads of broken glass and urine in the urinal that was covered in blood. Lovely stuff. Start with Geordie financial year stuff. And which was when I used to talk about the end of the financial year, but I used to do lots of Geordie voices, which actually stayed in my set for too long because people did like it. And then, right, I've written a long act out. This is genuinely true of the interview process by which Dangerous Dave Pearce got the drive time slot on Radio 1. Now, I looked this up, and he hadn't been doing drive time for over a year. So it wasn't even topical. He'd done it for like 10 years in the 90s, and I thought, finally, I think someone needs to take Radio 1 to task over this. So this is a sample bit of the script. Radio 1... I did this live. Radio 1 producer, what do you think you can bring to the slot of drive time on Radio 1? Dave, my background is in dance music, specifically Balearic. This is a live stand-up event. But for drive time, I'm hoping to concentrate on phone-ins. Hopefully I'll take a call from a listener who's mad and thinks that disgraced snooker player Alex Higgins lived under his bed and is all wrapped up in old Heat magazines. That lasted 2 pages, then I did an anecdote about visiting my friend in hospital, then the set ended. Now, I was acting out all of the parts. Imagine turning up to a nightclub in Abertillery to see...
I mean, you could stop there.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
To see an amateur comic going, is anyone else annoyed that Dangerous Dave Pearce did drive time 10 years ago? Well, imagine the interview process. No need, because I'm about to act it out, because I've imagined it in my mind.
Now, it's time for everyone's favourite feature, Elis's Gig Diaries. These are the stories Elis took note of in his formative years as a stand-up, and I can't wait.
April 19th, 2007, Le Pub, Newport.
I'm
do that
there.
gig? Did you do that gig?
There, Le Pub.
Far too many acts on the bill, a mix of locals and a couple of English guys. I was on last and couldn't believe that no one had mentioned the local paper as the South Wales Argus. I did, and it worked. This effective use of local knowledge bodes well for the future. April the 28th, 2007, so about a week later, charity gig for British Heart Foundation, Chapter Arts Centre, Cardiff. Badly organised. I had to go on following a plaintive acoustic set and a drawn-out auction where a man paid £60 to go on a zorbing weekend in Pembrokeshire. The crowd were restless. The nurses in attendance were particularly badly behaved, but I took them on. I showed them who was boss, and I won. I must try and build the ad-lib about turning up at the gig in a horse-drawn carriage into my set. May 4th, 2007. Slightly more depressing.
Oh, my birthday!
Yeah, slightly more depressing, this one. Will I ever be ready to play punchline comedy Leighton Buzzard?
No, you didn't say that.
I had a really tough time in Leighton Buzzards. They absolutely hated me. Oh, awful. Oh, God. It was a really high ceiling, and I think they knew comedy was on. I started talking about CDs.
It's amazing when you're starting out in comedy that those goals are massive.
Yeah, I'd done it twice as well, and the second time, Sheffield Lyceum Theatre, 4th of October 2009, supporting Rod Gilbert. Why can't I focus? I only have myself to blame. Hotel time should be writing time, so why did I watch You Only Live Twice when I should have been working on this? Oh, dear. Yeah, the gig was all right. The Lyceum Theatre is a sort of grand old Victorian theatre, and it went okay, I think. But it's got sort of royal boxes and this amazing coving because it was built 130 years ago. And I think I kept pointing that out. I should really have looked less pleased to be there.
What I often think about stand-ups is how badly they use their time, because broadly we are free between 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. every day, broadly.
Yes, unless you've got a gig that's a long way off. Yeah.
And yet when you turn up to like Old Rope, which is a wonderful new material night in London at the Phoenix every Monday, every single comedian is sat at the back with their notebooks working out what they're going to say on stage. And you're like, you've had all day.
But I can't write anything unless I've got adrenaline in my body. Because if I write stuff in the day, it's just rubbish.
Is that why I often see you through your window punching yourself in the face in front of a typewriter?
Yeah. Come on! You want this!
For the past couple of months, Elis has been regaling us with excerpts from his early gig diaries, which he kept religiously for his sort of first 5 or 6 years in stand-up. And this week, we've got a first of 2 sections of this. It's a bumper pack of Elis's gig diaries. So, Elis, over to you.
Right. March the 4th, 2006. I don't seem to be able to write new material that's as good as the stuff I came up with in my first set. I'm at a creative impasse and I don't know why. Time and time again, I find myself in a sticky situation at a gig and I revert to my default setting of Cornish one-night stand, Geordie financial year and alloy wheel.
I love the fact that Geordie financial years made it into your sort of hits.
It was. Geordie financial year I probably did for 18 months as my opening line.
Which is longer than the Geordie financial year.
Of the new stuff, Crimean War Alcopops is too niche. Student bin observation is too age-specific, and pesto pasta routine makes me appear arrogant. Poncho Comedy Club, Cardiff, 2005. I haven't actually dated this. Arrived late. Robbins was actually sat on a table just improvising with the crowd. It was superb. Vividly remember that. Neil from Newport talked about a child being tied to a dog and the audience lapped it up. His is a very authentic voice. During the interval, Robbins showed me his sat-nav and told me that when you consider how much petrol you save in not getting lost looking for a venue, it actually pays for itself. But he does gig more than me. Oh, Night overran, thank God. Too many of the audience have seen my alloy wheel and Geordie financial year stuff, so I did the news story about being sick after going on a long bike ride, which did well. I think the audience could tell how fresh this story is and that I was enjoying myself. This is something to remember. Freshness is key.
Freshness is key. That and having the confidence to sit on a table and riff with the audience.
I remember it. You were wearing wide bootcut jeans. Like, sort of, they were very light, almost stonewashed denim.
Yeah.
Obviously, Queen hoodie.
Let's be clear that they were cool back then.
Yeah. They were fine. They certainly were acceptable. I think I
Yes.
would have been probably wearing bootcut jeans as well.
Do you remember what I was riffing about with the audience?
No, because you were on first and I arrived late and I was watching you through the door, but you were just sat on a table and you were just like chilling out and you were much better at talking to an audience at that stage than I was. I was too nervous to do
At that
it.
stage?
Okay. Well, I mean, I can do it now, but I wouldn't do it at all then.
Yeah.
So, just watching you, like asking people where they were from or what they did for a living while sat on a table.
And also providing sound advice about sat-navs.
Yes.
I remember buying that sat-nav and feeling really pleased.
Yeah, you were on with Sully Sullivan, the actor from New Zealand who's based in Manchester. So I've written it down. I said, aren't they like 200 quid though? And he said, yeah, but think of the petrol you saved looking for venues. What are you using? A route plan? I was like, yeah. And he said, what happens when your sheets go wrong? I was like, yeah, good point, John. Good point. God, he's so wise. John is so wise.
Elis James and John Robbins. Radio X.
Now, for our second trawl through the vaults today, earlier we heard clips from my first ever radio outing on student radio, but we now have another excerpt from Elis's formative years, the gig diaries he kept as an early stand-up comedian. Elis, take it away.
This is from July 2005.
Very soon after you started, then.
Yeah, about 6 months in. Saw Garth Gwynn at the Model Inn tonight, a promising new act from Neath. He has a great joke about the flyers for political parties, which got me thinking, why am I not doing topical? I have a politics degree. Should I not be using it? One of the other actors from New Zealand and tried to get the audience to sit around him like there was a campfire on the stage, and it's one of the worst things I've ever seen. It's called Stand Up for a reason.
Ooh.
My set was fine, even though the putting my CDs in the wrong cases routine got almost no laughs tonight, but Tom Crane promised me that the audience were definitely listening and have told me that they might have all felt a bit hot. Not all gigs are going to be like the Poncho Comedy Club at Chapter Arts Centre. Tonight proved to be that putting my CDs in the wrong cases routine desperately needs a gear change. When I was in the toilet, one punch asked me why I was talking about it. 7th of August 2005. Opened by mentioning the death of Robin Cook, the former Foreign Secretary.
Is that your topical?
Yeah. A lady in the front row asked who he was. The joke tanked and I never recovered. I think that's the end for me in topical. Trying to get them back with Geordie financial year, but by then the lady who hadn't heard of Robin Cook was ordering food.
I love that Geordie financial year is like your sort of...
Yes, my
rock.
go-to, yeah. 13th of August 2005, Yellow Kangaroo, Cardiff. As we're now over 4 months into it, I have to accept that Geordie financial year is no longer topical enough to be funny. That said, my impression of the man who mixed up Bargoed and London and couldn't remember where his son worked got a round of applause. It never gets anything in England, but the two Matts said there was nothing wrong with having a specific Welsh set. Cold Robbins, who told me that not having my details on comedycv.co.uk was a disgrace and was costing me work.
He's right. He said that his £60 gig in Tamworth came directly from the site, but there's no way I'm ready for Tamworth.
I'll be honest with you, mate. I don't think I was ready for Tamworth. Or maybe Tamworth wasn't ready for me.
Yes, that's more like it.
There we go.
I eventually did Tamworth about 2 years later, and gotta be honest, went pretty well.
Did it?
Yeah.
Are you still on comedycv.co.uk?
I think I am, actually.
Oh, Vin, am I
But
allowed to Google it
But
to
it's
see what it says on
not,
Ellis's
it's
profile?
not a recent enough, it's not an old enough profile to be funny. It's sort of halfway house.
Is it?
Yeah, I did it in about 2010, I think, so it's not awful, whereas my first one was absolutely horrendous. I didn't have any photos of myself, so it was of me in a tent at the Green Man Festival.
Oh, is it? I'm getting it up now.
Oh, let's not do
There's
this.
too many acts on here to scroll through, and I don't know what the Windows shortcut for find is. Ellis James, here we go.
Oh, let's not do this. Let's play a track. Let's play a track, Vin. Let's play a track.
Oh, no, this is actually all right.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. So let's play a track.
Yeah, fine. It's not funny at all. It's just accurate.
But I will show you one during this next track that will make you laugh for an hour.
Okay.
But anyway, we've got great music coming from El King, a Bare Naked Ladies. Listen to Ellis James and John Robbins on Radio X.
Radio X. Elis James and John Robbins.
Anyway, it's time for Ellis's gig Diaries, where Ellis and I are both stand-up comedians, I would say, in the top quartile.
Yeah, just about.
Yeah, we're sort of in the 76th percentile.
Yeah, we're sort of, if it was a footballing analogy, we're part of that sort of mini league of clubs that yo-yo between the Premier League and Championship.
Yes, we have appeared on TV, but you wouldn't have seen it. Pretty much sums up our careers. Anyway, when me and Ellis started out at the same time in the hotbed of talent that was the Bristol-Cardiff axis around 2005, 6, 7, and at that time, whilst I was going from strength to strength, playing gigs for up to £40 cash, Ellis was keeping a rather disturbingly well-maintained diary of his gigs, and he's been reading them out on the show for a few months now, and I'm very looking forward to our most recent entry.
Right, okay, here we go. This is from November 2007, late November 2007. I have been mollycoddled. I'm in a bubble, and tonight I was cruelly exposed. I invited representatives of the Karushi Management Agency to my gig at the Comedy Cafe, and I was humiliated.
Amazing.
They managed, at the time, quite famous comedians, and I asked them if they'd represent me, and they needed to see me, and it was my only gig in London.
At the Cafe?
At the Cafe, yeah, which is at the time one of the hardest
What
gigs.
night was it? Do you remember?
It was a Friday night before
mate.
Christmas, so it was horrific. So obviously they wanted to see if I was the sort of comedian they'd want to take on and represent. I invited them to a very rowdy club gig, and there were lots of sort of works do's in. And I was supporting Rod Gilbert at the time, and I was just doing sort of nice theatre shows, so I was completely out of my depth. Alarm bells should have rung when Martin the compere kept rubbing his hands together and saying that things look tasty.
Oh, is it Martin?
Yeah, Martin Davis.
I used to call everyone in the venue Captain. All right, Captain.
Yeah. He used to live above the venue, and he once did the gig. It started at 9. He did the gig with wet hair because at 10 to 9 he'd been in the shower. But anyway, and when Wayne asked me if I wanted to do 10 instead of 20 because there were 2 culturals in from Essex who had lied about not being a stag do, I told him that I had agents in and that I was fine to do my full set. How wrong I was. I met the Karuchi girls beforehand and we got on. They even offered to look after my cagoule and wallet doing the show, which filled me with confidence. The gig was horrendous, a horror show. As soon as I opened my mouth, people started calling me a sheep and saying that I was dressed as a farmer. And I realised that even though I'd been going for over 2 years, I didn't have a pre-prepared comeback. I just kept insisting that I wasn't a sheep and asking why they were saying that. People were chatting and I'd ask them to stop, and once one table was quiet, another table would start. I was sweating. Why did I start with new? Why did I start with sex education lisp?
You started with new stuff.
Yes, because I'd only just thought of it, and I when you come up with an idea and you think that it's the best idea you've ever had, and because it was so rowdy, I thought, right, I'll hit them with something really nice and punchy, because I was taught sex education at school by someone with a lisp, and I thought, this is going to be superb. The cultural from Essex wouldn't let me get my impression out, and the people who were listening didn't know why I was talking about it. About 13 minutes in, I saw the Karushi girls leave, so I made my excuses and walked off halfway through Geordie financial year.
What, like when Alan follows the guys out of
It was so much like that.
Oh, mate.
So I was watching them, watching me, and after about 2 minutes, it was just horrific. And then after about 10 minutes, halfway through, they knew I was doing 20 minutes. They just thought, right, we've seen enough. So they just got up.
That is so rude.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it wasn't, oh my God. But anyway, so I just went, anyway, gotta go. Like, so the compere wasn't ready, and I just left. It was an empty stage. So I chased them. So I thought maybe they've seen enough and they're going back to the office to draft up the contracts. I chased them down Rivington Street and asked them what they thought. One of them said she'd call me and that I shouldn't call her. The other one said that she urgently had to get to Reading. I will never forget that. I said, what are you doing now? Do you want to go for a drink? She went, no, I've got to be in Reading very soon. So anyway, I thanked them for coming before realising that they had left my wallet and cagoule on the table, and so I had to run back into the venue. Oh, God, imagine if we'd been pinched. But they just thought, right, we've seen enough. So they left my stuff and just legged it.
Where are they now?
Well, I don't know.
Probably doing quite a lot of marketing company.
yeah.
Where's Ellis James? I'll tell you where he is. Selling out the Shepherd's Bush Empire in 5 days. Unprecedented in the history of alternative comedy.
Yes, thank you. Also the saviour of Radio Afternoon. That doesn't even make sense. I'm the saviour of radio in the afternoon with John for a bit.
And now, folks, it's time to delve into the journals of Mr. Ellis James as we hear another excerpt from the diaries he used to keep as a young stand-up comedian in the heady days of 05 to 07.
Okay, June 2007. Yet again, my frailties have been exposed. I was asked to MC a regular improv night for drama students at the Royal College of Music and Drama. It's a residency, £50 per show every 2 weeks. The first gig a fortnight ago was fine, but I raced through all my material: Alloy Wheel, Drunk Northerner, Geordie Financial Year, and Cornish One-Night Stand impression. Miriam, the organiser, seemed pleased, but I was uneasy, and I was right to be. Tonight was a disaster. Having gone through all my material last time, I had planned to banter my way through the show, but this was painfully naive. During the first section, I asked the lad in the front row what he did. He said, I study acting. I asked him what he wanted to do for a living after graduating, to which he replied, act. Sensing a comedic cul-de-sac, I moved on and asked his friend the same question, but his reply was identical.
Pause. We're going to have to pause for Ellis to do a cough off air because tears are streaming down his face, and they're not tears of nostalgia for his early career. He has got a frog in his throat.
They were all actors, but I didn't have any other questions. Panicking, I continued until after the 6th person, the promoter gently suggested that I moved on.
Oh, no.
Oh, it was awful. I decided to pick on a cocky lad in the 3rd row who had performed confidently last week in a skit where Shakespeare was set on the Falls Road in Belfast. I asked him what his parents did for a living, to which he replied, why are you asking me this? To which I said, I don't know. Sensing blood, people started to ask who I was and what I was doing there, until the cocky lad asked that if I was a comedian, why didn't I do jokes? I said that's fair enough and tried to do Cornish One-Night Stand impression, but they groaned and said that they'd already heard it. Defeated, I brought on the next improv troupe, where 3 men pretended to be on a date but in a big light bulb.
Oh, improv.
After the show, Miriam asked if I wanted to continue doing the gig, to which I replied yes, because I really need the money. Conclusion: I need more MC questions, ideas. What is your favourite thing about Christmas, bracket winter? What is your favourite thing about a barbecue, bracket summer? Question. Idea 3, do you get on with your boss, and if not, why? And then I've got a note to myself, call Mark Oliver and Silky, who were 2 compares who used to work a lot at gigs I did in sort of 2006, 2007, who were excellent. And yeah, I just completely ran out of ideas.
I do remember in the early days of me comparing gigs, before you get the skills, it is just questions you ask, relying on people having funny answers, which is not the way to go.
No.
And especially when you're doing regular gigs and you do your material and you realise you've sort of
you do it all in the first week, and then you're reliant that there's an astronaut in the front row.
Yeah.
And if the person in the front row works in a call centre, you have nothing. Oh,
so there you go, team. Another extract next week. But right now, this is Wolves of Winter by Biffy Clyro. It's summer. It's time to get outside, grab an ice cream and relax in a park. Johnny Cash there with Hurt. You are listening to Elis James and John Robbins on Radio X, and now it's time to plunge into that deep, refreshing pool of Elis James's gig diaries.
August 2007, So You Think You're Funny semi-final.
Wow, just to put a bit of context on this, Elis is reading from the diaries he kept as in his early days of stand-up career, and So You Think You're Funny is the Everest of every new act's
It's the
career.
Grammys.
It's the Grammys.
Yeah, it's the Mobos. It's all of them. It's a very big deal if you're a new actor.
It's a competition where you do sort of 5 minutes, is it?
8 minutes, 10 minutes in the final. And the final, the year before, was compared by Bill Bailey, and Steve Coogan was one of the judges. So it is quite a big deal. Josh Widdicombe got to the final, and it was Josh Widdicombe, Sean Walsh, and someone else really
What
famous.
year did you do it?
07 I did.
07, so Elis had been going 2 years. I did it in 05, the year I started, made it to the semi-final.
Yes,
so
I actually was committing very, 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 very minor fraud.
hit us with the diary.
Set list, Geordie financial year, Leeds train station baguette rant, Cornish one-night stand impression, CD cases.
That's his set list.
I performed this at the Hawaiian on Sunday, and it came in at 10.5 mins, more than 2 mins over my allotted time. Dan Atkinson told me that I would be marked down for overrunning, but the Hawaiian in Cardiff is home turf. I have to expect the gig in Edinburgh to be tough. Geordie financial year no longer feels relevant, but Robin said that I must have faith in my best stuff. Got an email from Julia Chamberlain, the organiser. She seems to really want us all to succeed. Her email suggests that we don't go on stage with loose change in our pockets and other bits of great advice.
Yeah. Bet she said don't mention the backdrop.
Yes. And she said don't go on with full pockets because it's distracting. I remember thinking, that is good. Thank you, Julia.
I saw someone recently on stage with an iPhone in their pocket, and I told them afterwards, don't do that.
I mean, good advice, there's a trickle-down effect to it. You know, it's good advice sticks. August the 10th, so I'm in Edinburgh. It's the first time I've ever been to Scotland, in fact. I was allowed to run through my set tonight at a free fringe gig. As I walked on, I said that I was from Wales, and a stag do of 17 Northern Irishmen immediately walked out, leaving an audience of 2. Matt Price shouted, "Welcome to Edinburgh," from the back of the room, and I immediately went to pieces. I rattled through my set in about 5 mins, which begged the question, do I need to have more material as backup? With audience momentum, I can riff around Leeds train station baguette rant, but I don't want to have to rely on that at such a high-profile gig. It was very weak as well. Leeds train station baguette rant. August the 11th. Dan Mitchell pulled in a favour and got me on at another free fringe gig, which should have allowed me to run through my So You Think You're Funny set for the semi. Alarm bells started to ring when I realised that the pub was over 2 miles from Edinburgh city centre and deserted. 10 minutes after the show was meant to start, there was nobody in the audience.
Is that the one up Leith Walk?
Oh, God, I can't remember. It was miles from town, though. Oh,
I think I remember that one.
yeah, but Dan knew someone who ran the gigs, so he sort of got me on as a favour. 10 minutes after the show was meant to start, there was nobody in the audience. Eventually, a man walked in, and the other acts, this is true, decided to abandon the microphone and their prepared sets and just sit next to him and tell him about their lives.
Oh, my God.
So they just sat next to him and said, "Hi, I was born in 1985. I've got a degree in politics." Oh, God. He seemed local, and I wasn't convinced that he wanted to see stand-up because he was drunk at lunchtime on a weekday. So suddenly performing Geordie financial year felt very unnatural. I made my excuses, thanked him for coming, and left. The semi-final is tomorrow night. To be continued, ladies.
Oh, a cliffhanger.
It's a cliffhanger. That is the very, very, very worst aspect of the fringe. That 3 open mic comics are running a gig with an audience of 0, and some drunk bloke walks in and they're like, "Guys, it's the festival." So they just sat next to this guy who wanted a pint on his own and started telling him about their girlfriends. And
But I mean, I remember being, when you're at that stage, you're so happy to experiment because you think you're being sort of creative, and actually you are just ruining someone's day.
Yeah, they did ruin his day.
Anyway, folks, more from Gig Diaries soon. We'll have the conclusion to that story. So, team, exciting times now. Tenterhooks are abounding in the studio because it is the second part of Elis's Gig Diaries. Now, we were on a cliffhanger last week. The young Elis James had been entered into the So You Think You're Funny competition in Edinburgh. It's make or break. He's been given advice. He's had practice gigs. He's also, let's just bear in mind, taking part in the competition 2 years after he was sort of legally not allowed. He was too experienced by this point. Some people who actually fell in line with the terms and conditions of application did just as well with maybe 2 or 3 years less experience under their belt. So let's just bear that in mind.
All right, it's not a competition, and we all.
It is a competition. It's a comedy competition, and competitions have rules.
Yeah, and life is not a competition, John. Anyway, let me read my diary entry. So You Think You're Funny semi-final, Gilded Balloon, August 2007. Notes from before the gig. Open by telling the audience what my dentist told me about my aggressive plaque to appear unglamorous and accessible. Now, quite arrogant that I thought that I would ever appear unglamorous and inaccessible, and that I'd have to talk about plaque for people to go, no, he's fine, he's one of us, he's all right, he's cool, the guy's got plaque. Posh person having a marquee at their birthday party observation is not punch enough. Tighten up or drop it. Shakespeare as a rapper conceit that I tried at the Cannon's Gate last night. It is too wordy and new. Drop. No one else finds the idea of walls still being fought with muskets funny. Drop. Observation about the font graffiti artists use is going nowhere. Drop. I got to the gig and all the other acts knew each other from London. I was so nervous my eyeballs were pulsing. I was on 7th from 8, so I got a chance to see my competition. And as the night wore on, I grew in confidence. 4 of the acts had jokes about runny poo that went nowhere, and everyone seemed as nervous as me. A cool-looking art student from London in a leather jacket was on before me, who I expected great things from. His set was disjointed, and his time machine stuff was completely inaccessible. I felt in touching distance as I walked to the stage, thinking that the maths was in my favour. Aggressive plaque to open was a mistake, but I got them back with Geordie financial year. Leeds train station baguette rant was as solid as ever, and I felt able to improvise during Cornish one-night stand impression. I ended on my CDs being in the wrong case story, feeling that I could do no more. Unfortunately, the final act was good. Too good. I later found out that he was a professional in Ireland and was using So You Think You're Funny as a springboard to British success.
Oh, there's
not
always
fair,
one.
not fair. The art student said that he knew the Irish guy had won the Magners competition in Dublin, but he didn't care because he wanted to be an artist anyway. He was rubbish, by the way. Absolutely, although he did look the part. The rest of the bill were distraught. I chatted to Julie, the organiser, and Rod Gilbert, the judge, who said that I had been unlucky. Rod took me to one side and said that of me and the Irish guy, if he found out that we were both going on to do longer sets at other gigs, he would come to my gig because he wanted to hear more from me. He wanted to hear how Leeds train station baguette rant ended. I didn't tell him that it ended at the point where I had ended it. I did assure him that I had loads more stuff. He said that he made the potential argument to other judges, but that it had fallen on deaf ears. Devastated. Out at the semis, guys. Out at the semis.
Mate.
That Irish bloke, he was... I'm not going to name him, but he was a professional.
Is he still a comic?
I've not heard of it. He's probably living in a mansion in Dublin, isn't he?
What's his name?
I'll tell you later, because
Okay,
I feel
thanks,
unfair. But, yeah, he was a pro, and that is not fair. I might be going too long, but I certainly wasn't making any money.
I feel your pain, Elis, as a fellow So You Think You're Funny semi-final victim to a certain Mr. Kevin Bridges.
Oh. We're more survivors than victims, I think.
Well, also, the panel that night, the judging panel, had
all
been...
Scottish.
All Scottish.
Oh,
bar
hello.
one man.
Unwinnable if you're from Thornbury.
And they were... and they were tied between me and Bridges. What? And the casting vote was by a Scottish owner of the venue.
Yes, and I know her. She likes to endorse Scottish talent. Well, where is he now?
He's good. He's very good.
He is
He's
excellent.
very good.
He's one of the naturally most funny people in the country, I think. But still, where is it? He's probably in his massive house in Glasgow.
Yeah, he's probably having
He might be listening to it. No, he isn't.
No, he isn't.
Bye, Kevin.
Oh, we got so drunk after that competition and made fools of ourselves in the bar.
What, you and Kevin?
No, me and all the other losers.
Oh,
It was a strong old heat, though.
Absolutely gutted with mine. I remember, I was nervous all day. And I remember Rod said, I want to hear all these, the Leeds train station thing, the CDs on cases. How does it progress? I was thinking, it doesn't progress at all.
But look, he sort of became your patron in a way, didn't he?
He did, yeah. I supported him on tour. the year after, and he was very good to me, actually. I was able to sort of go full time as a comedian because of Rod, because I was supporting him so much and no one else was booking me. So thank you very much, Rod Gilbert, and I'm happy now. Things going pretty well for me.
Now it's time for that part in the show where Elis offers up a little morsel from the diaries he used to keep as a new stand-up back in the heady days of the mid-2000s. So it's over to Elis for the most recent instalment.
This is a mix of diary entries, but all surrounding the same central theme. So I've called it Learning Curve. It's from around 2006. Worrying chat with Robbins. He said that he'd been talking with the Bristol comics, Russell, John, Mark, etc., and that you should perform in plain clothing. I asked him what he meant, and he said he feels that his Listen to Zappa t-shirt is detracting from his onstage message.
I still own that t-shirt 10 years later,
Yeah,
and at that point I'd had it for 5 years.
And that people are finding it distracting. I realise that I often perform in t-shirts with writing on, and in one case a t-shirt that has pictures of historic tattoos. Still have that t-shirt, don't worry. As John made his argument, it all started to make sense. I need to go plain. Next gig. I opened the Model Inn tonight doing some new in the first half before Cheltenham comic Nick Page headlined. I wore a plain red polo shirt and it felt good. I wasn't telling the audience what to expect. I was letting my words do the work. Yeah. 4:40pm, 31st of Jan 2007. Write a show about manliness. Now, this is from a comedy seminar in Swansea that I actually paid to go on. 16th of the 7th, 2007. So, I mean, it was done for about, oh my God.
You went on a comedy course?
Yeah.
Did you really?
Yes, I did. I'll tell you who took it during the next track.
Will you not tell me? Are you not going to tell the listeners?
No, because the advice is quite poor.
Because anyone who's ever
done stand-up will know who this person is.
I was going to say anyone who's ever hosted a comedy workshop is an absolute...
Yeah. Yes, I agree. Anyway, these are some of the notes I took. Intro. Say, are we ready to laugh, people?
That's what they told you to do.
This is useful, manipulative. You are planting seeds in the audience's mind. Try to write... Oh, yeah, target. Try to write a new 35 seconds every day.
They said that?
Yeah. I love the fact that it's 35 seconds and not 30 or a minute. Remember, you are not a stand-up. You are an individual business unit. And then I've got loads and loads of...
An IBU.
An IBU, and I've got loads and loads of pictures of pies, because he's obviously... The pie represented my income, and then he's taken out a slice for like agent's commission, and a slice for petrol, and a slice for tax. So I point an arrow at like, and this pie equals me. After that, I've written, this cost me £60 because we were passing notes. All the comics from Cardiff went, try to remember integrity is important. Stand-up comics are bringers of truth.
Wow, bringers of truth, who opened by saying, are we ready to laugh?
Yeah. Next one. Find out local rough part of town for banter.
Nice.
Because we're bringers of truth,
exactly.
John. We need to remember our integrity. We're individual business units. But the rest of the advice.
Saying, are we ready to laugh is like the sort of thing you'd get at a sort of a community centre drop-in for people with depression.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Are we ready to laugh?
It was I'd entered...
Come on, it's easy. Laughter releases endorphins.
Yeah. It's the sort of chemical in your brain that makes you feel good after exercise. So come on, everybody.
Don't be embarrassed.
I went on that comedy course as a prize, as a consolation prize, because I'd failed to get through the first round of a comedy competition that the company was running.
Amazing.
So they said, well, you all need to go on the course then. But that's free as a consolation prize. So
are all the people who went through people who came on and said, is everyone ready to laugh? God, Barnet's a right hole, isn't it? Am I wrong?
Anyway, there'll be more of those next week.
And just before those tracks, we heard an excerpt from Elis's Gig Diaries where he discussed the wisdom passed on to him at a stand-up workshop. He's now told me who it was who hosted that workshop, and I laughed for approximately 35 seconds, which is the amount of material that the workshop suggested people write every day. But Elis then remembered one extra gem.
Yeah, I hadn't written this down, but I just remember him taking me to one side and saying, you've got to remember, you're an individual business unit. As soon as you walk into a comedy club or a venue that hosts comedy, people watching you. The show manager
he's watching you. He's thinking beforehand, is he drinking? Is he going to be taking drugs? Whatever he needs to do so that he's perfect on stage, I'll let him do that. But if he has a couple of pints of Kronenberg and he gets it wrong, he's on my blacklist. And he just kept saying, and he was like, sure, you know, you shadowbox in the dressing room, that's fine. If that's what you need to do to get you up to tip-top condition, that's cool. But if you're having a couple of pints because you think stand-up's easy or a laugh, just remember, there's a lot of comics out there who want to make it in this game. Am I right? And I was like, yeah, I know.
Your stand-up should be a bit of a laugh. Folks, we've had one instalment of Bushcraft Diaries today, but it's time now to return to the world of Elis's gig diaries, kept assiduously?
Religiously?
What's assiduously?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Google it.
When he was starting as a stand-up, and we rapidly becoming a favourite feature of many fans of the show. So, Elis, hit us with your most recent diary entry.
Right, found a new book last night, and this is slightly different. It's from quite late. It's from 2008, and I went full-time in 2008, so slight late period than what people are used to. And it's just a collection of short notes from gigs I was doing in 2008. So here we go. First 10-minute slot at the Comedy Store London.
Oh.
Yeah, big deal. 28th of
They
June.
don't book either of us, do they?
No. 28th, because too edgy, mate.
Too edgy.
Yeah, too edgy. 28th of June 2008. Note, if I'm heckled aggressively, buy myself some time by asking the heckler if they're from a broken home.
That's quite good advice, actually.
Right, and this is the Bullingdon, Oxford for Silky.
Oh.
I don't know if you ever did that gig.
Yes,
It was a
I did
lovely
do that gig.
Silky runs lovely gigs. Idea. If gig is going well, create momentum by comparing myself to Martin Luther King.
How would that work?
I don't know. I think the idea, looking back, was that if I was getting a lot of laughs, then I'd sort of step back and I'd say, I'm a bit like Martin Luther King. And it would be such an arrogant thing to say. I would create more laughs, and then that would allow me to go into Leeds train station baguette rant.
Okay, I see.
Note, if crowd isn't too restless, replace Leeds train station baguette rant with boiled sweet observation, which did end up in my 2011 Edinburgh show, believe it or not.
Did it?
Yes.
What was your boiled sweet?
I choked on a boiled sweet at a pantomime when I was 10, and I somehow got 7 minutes out of that.
Amazing.
The Newbury Comedy Festival, 7th of July 2008.
Remember that?
Yeah, for Avalon. MC. It was an interesting one because there was 5 or 6 of us on the bill, and we travelled around Newbury, and I was the compere, and I was like a sort of the Pied Piper of laughter. So I had to take people around and introduce a different act in every venue. Note, reassured a nervous-looking girl in the front row that I wasn't a threat by talking about my time on Carmarthen Youth Council. Effective. Build on this.
How do you build on that?
I don't know. But obviously it was an ad lib, and it went quite well. And I thought, hello. And then I've looked at my notes from the next gig, which was in Plymouth, and I mentioned it again to absolutely nothing. Note from that gig, Newbury Comedy Festival for Avalon, 7th of July 2008. There was meant to be a reviewer at the show, but he'd double booked himself. This is genuinely true. So he sent his dad along instead, who reviewed the show on behalf of his son, even though he'd never reviewed anything before in his life.
Amazing.
And so it was for the Newbury Chronicle, whatever the local rag is around there. But this reviewer's dad, he interrupted the first act's routine by shouting, "Oh, here comes the C word!"
Oh.
Yeah, just he was preempting it. Anyway, Shaw Pebbles, a bar that's now sort of gone bust in Womerby Street, Cardiff, 23rd of July 2008. Tough gig, as the microphone was in Pontypridd. I turned up and she said, "You don't need a microphone, do you?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Oh, it's a shame because the microphone's in Pontypridd." And I said, that's 10 miles away. And she said, "Yeah, no, it's a shame. There'll be no microphone." I went, "Fine." Difficult to motivate myself as the doors were open because the room was so hot, but the venue was directly opposite a nightclub that was playing drum and bass. Only did 18 minutes of my allotted 20 as I literally couldn't be bothered to do boiled sweet observation, but the bouncer sarcastically shouting more at the end convinced the drunk bar owner to pay me an extra tenner, thus topping up my fee to £60. 7 out of 10.
Great stuff.
almost
man.
impossible, that gig, because there was just it was like doing a festival.
Yeah.
Loads of loud drum and bass from opposite, across the road, and no mic. So I tried to walk around like a sort of
TED Talk.
like a TED Talk, yeah, or like a sort of travelling minstrel, delivering stand-up to disinterested punters. But anyway, there'll be more of these next week.
And it is time to delve into the back catalogue of Mr. Ellis James' gig diaries, which he kept studiously as a new comedian in the mid to late 2000s. So, Ellis, what's today's piece?
25th of October 2007, incidentally, my sister's birthday. But I didn't go to her party because Volunteer Tavern, Bristol, first opening 20 for Mirth Control.
Which I believe is at Sam Smith's pub.
Is it? Well, no taxi drivers had heard of it. Now, Mirth Control, they run lots of gigs that sort of newer acts do. Audience, 5 men in high-vis jackets drinking cider in silence, a drunk Glaswegian without a shirt on, a man who kept calling me Teen Wolf, and a bloke who refused to listen because I was Welsh and they should build a wall around Wales. Halfway through my set, some grandparents brought a 5-year-old girl in who used the mic stand as a maypole. Train fare £8.60, taxi fare £7.60, profit £23.90. Now then, I'm very hard on myself. Ditch the Welsh parochial stuff, especially if I'm gigging abroad in England. Choose wider topics, but for God's sake, make it quirky and avoid hack stuff. For example, I've just noticed that this pen is running out, and my immediate thought was, yes, I've not lost a penny's worth of value on this pen by losing it. I've justified spending £1.99 on a nice pen that's got liquid ink. Obviously, this needs a lot of work, but maybe I could do my comedy in this direction. Oh, I don't know.
You seem to be at some sort of crisis.
Oh, you weren't at the gig. Do more character stuff.
I was in high vis.
Do more character stuff in my stories. Crowds do seem to connect with this. Run new gags, as in deliberate, written punchlines past my friends. I'm aware that I will never be Woody Allen. Note to self, watch some Woody Allen. Talk to good, established comedians about my material. Rod Gilbert, Lloyd Langford, etc. Tonight on stage I felt very young, and I know for a fact that John Richardson, John Robbins, Russell Howard, etc. don't have this problem. Why me?
What problem?
Feeling very young on stage. I felt that people were laughing at me and not taking me seriously because I looked so young. But I knew that you're younger than me, but I thought John never feels young, does he? Because he has gravitas and authority.
I can't deny that everything you say is true.
Well, there's a note to self to call you to ask about how you get gravitas.
Read it out.
Well, it's just that. It's just ring Robbins, talk to him about his age. And then the last note, painfully aware that I'm funnier off stage and on. Talked to the barmaid and got more laughs out of talking about dial-up internet at my parents' house than I did during my set. How do I harness this? Will I ever harness this? Oh, God, I was in a bad place.
That question's been hanging in the air for about 8 years now, Ellis.
11 years.
11? Is that 11 years ago? 11?
No, 2007 that gig is, so it's 9 years ago. But it's horrendous. And then the girl, she was dancing around the mic stand, but I didn't feel able to ask her to stop, so I just let her do it. And then this guy was like, "Hey, Teen Wolf! Are you gonna tell any jokes, Teen Wolf?" I was like, no, I'm not gonna tell any jokes. I'm gonna do some deep character work.
Well, in a sense, Ellis, you were doing deep character work on yourself.
Yes. Oh, God.
It's hard. You have to go through those pitfalls. You have to go through those troughs in order to scale the dizzy heights of...
Still in a trough, John.
But Ellis, you're about to go to the Euros for Radio Wales. You've scaled the dizzy heights.
I am, but I feel like I'm in a trough staring at the stars.
Ellis, you're about to meet people who've met Gareth Bale.
Yes, I'm about to meet people who know the phone numbers of his team. Oh.